A very good afternoon, Honorable Officer in Charge, Krishnanagar Government College, distinguished guest, IQAC Coordinator, Teachers Council Secretary, and all the participants. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the one-day international webinar, Conservation Challenges in Changing Climate, organized by Department of Zoology in collaboration with IQAC and Nature Club, Krishnanagar Government College. Well, today we have two events. Besides the talk, I am glad to announce that we are going to publish our departmental e-magazine shortly. Now, I would like to introduce today's presenter, Dr. Orindam Roy, scientist at Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Lausanne, Switzerland. It feels nice to announce one of my students' name as a resource person. And this session is definitely going to give us new vision and better understanding regarding conservation strategies in the scenario of climate change. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. And now for the participant, we have a chat box to source your questions. So feel free to drop your questions and will be answered at the end of the presentation. Now I request Dr. Himani Bishar to take over the charge to conduct the program. So Dr. Bishar, please, and thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And I welcome once again all of you in our webinar, Conservation Challenges in Changing Climate. Now I would like to request our officer in charge of Krishnanagar Government College, Dr. Shobhan Yogi sir, to kindly deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Dr. Bishas. Today, our Zoology department, which is catering the need of the students up to postgraduate and research level, have organized one webinar at the international level regarding conservation challenges in changing climate. A really very good topic, which may be discussed from various angles. So in this webinar, I welcome at first our speaker, Dr. Orindam Roy, scientist at Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Lausanne, Switzerland. All the teachers from the Department of Zoology and other teachers who might have joined from our college and other colleges also, and the beloved students present in this webinar. I hope all of you will be benefited, students will be benefited to a good extent by such a scientist who will be talking for you for about 1 hour. I once again welcome Dr. Roy in this webinar to deliver his lecture in time. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable comments. Now to deliver special address, I would like to request the IQAC coordinator of Krishnanagar Government College, Dr. Muhua Chakraborty ma'am, to kindly do the honors. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Himani. First of all, I would like to express my deep pleasure to be part of this great endeavor of PG Department of Zoology. I congratulate them at the very outset on behalf of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell of Krishnanagar Government College. Our college is a heritage college, and most recently we have celebrated the completion of 175 years of its glorious existence. In carrying forward the legacy, today's international webinar on conservation challenges in changing climate is a significant addition. There is no doubt about that. The topic sounds really interesting to everyone. We are very much grateful to Dr. Orindam Roy, our esteemed speaker in today's webinar, for giving his consent to speak on this topic. And we are eagerly waiting to enrich our knowledge in the next 1 hour. So I don't want to waste any further time. Let me stop at this point. All the best to the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Now, I would like to request the Teachers' Council Secretary of this college, Dr. Omarish Mondal, sir, to say something on this webinar. Has sir joined? Tanmoy?
Oh, আচ্ছা। হ্যালো 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 হ্যাঁ 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 নমস্কার। প্রথমে জুলজি ডিপার্টমেন্টের বিভাগীয় প্রধান এবং অন্যান্য সহকর্মী, শিক্ষক শিক্ষিকা, তাদেরকে আমি ধন্যবাদ জানাবো এই জন্যে যে এটি এই একাডেমিক ইয়ারে তাদের তৃতীয় উদ্যোগ, তাদের এটি তৃতীয় ওয়েবিনারের আয়োজন। ইন্টারন্যাশনাল লেভেল একটি ওয়েবিনারের আয়োজন তারা করেছেন, এই জন্য তাদেরকে আন্তরিক ধন্যবাদ জানাই। আজকে এই আন্তর্জাতিক যে আলোচনা চক্রে যিনি অংশগ্রহণ করবেন, ডক্টর অনির্বাণ রায়, সায়েন্টিস্ট, সুইস ফেডারেল ইনস্টিটিউট অফ টেকনোলজি, সুইজারল্যান্ড। তো তাকে আমাদের কলেজের পক্ষ থেকে আন্তরিক শুভেচ্ছা জানাচ্ছি। তার ব্যস্ত সময়ের মধ্যে থেকে আমাদের এই কলেজে জুলজি বিভাগে সময় দেবার জন্য। তার যে আলোচনা, সেই আলোচনা অত্যন্ত প্রাসঙ্গিক, কারণ আজকের সময়ে যেভাবে প্রাকৃতিক যেসব সম্পদ, সেই সম্পদের বিনষ্টি ঘটছে, তো সেটাকে কিভাবে প্রিজার্ভ করা যায় আমাদের জন্য এবং আগামী প্রজন্মের জন্য, সেই বিষয়ে তিনি আলোকপাত করবেন বিভিন্ন দৃষ্টিকোণ থেকে। তা অবশ্যই আমাদেরকে সমৃদ্ধ করবে, আর ছাত্রছাত্রী যারা রয়েছে তারাও সচেতন হতে পারবেন আগামী প্রজন্মের জন্য এই বিষয়টি, বিশেষ করে যে সম্পদ, তার যে প্রিজার্ভেশনের বিষয়টি কতখানি তাৎপর্যপূর্ণ হতে যাচ্ছে, আর সে বিষয়েই তিনি আলোকপাত করবেন। আমি এই বিষয়ে তো সেভাবে কিছু আমার কোনো অধিকারই নেই, তবু আমি কথা বলবো যে এই বিষয়টি যে পছন্দ করা হয়েছে আলোচনার জন্য, সেই জন্য বিভাগীয় টিচার তাদেরকে আবার আমি আমার আন্তরিক ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি। ছাত্রছাত্রী এবং যারা শ্রোতা এই ওয়েবিনারের, তারা সকলেই উপকৃত হবেন আগামী 1 ঘন্টা সময়ে। সকলকে পুনরায় ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে আমি আমার বক্তব্য শেষ করছি।
Thank you very much, sir, for your nice and valuable words. Now, before entering into the next session of our talk, I would like to request HOD of Zoology Department, Dr. Shumana Dash ma'am, to kindly initiate the launch of our e-journal with few words and presentation.
Can I share Shumana right now?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Himani.
তোমার অডিওটা একটু বন্ধ রাখো, খুব ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড সাউন্ড আসছে।
আমার অডিওটা একটু অফ কর। With great excitement, today we are officially publishing the first issue of our e-magazine, Narthas. As a part of our Nature Club's activity, this initiative has been taken to encourage our students to address and explore the various aspects of the environment and share their thoughts as well. Narthas is presenting a glimpse of the different issues of nature through a number of research articles, travel story, and photography. Our undergraduate and postgraduate students, faculty, and students from other institutions have contributed to make this happen. I hope this would update our readers regarding various nature-related issues, and I appreciate every student and all the contributors who shared the joy of participation. I express my sincere thanks to all the reviewers for their untiring support and valuable time to evaluate the articles. I thankfully acknowledge the constant efforts of my colleagues. My special thank goes to the editor-in-chief, Dr. Tutapa Sannal, for materializing this. I hope that everyone would continue to give their full effort to keep the momentum and, and enhance the standard of this magazine. We welcome valuable feedback from the readers to improve this maiden attempt further. Thank you.
Can I stop the presentation now?
Yes, yes. Okay.
With the successful launch of our e-journal, now we are moving to our next session. And here I would like to gladly announce that today we have scientist Dr. Orindam Roy with us. Dr. Roy is an adept professional researching and working in the field of climate change for more than 8 years. He is currently working as a postdoctoral scientist at Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Lucerne, Switzerland, on air quality policy and in policy over Indian cities with Swiss Development Cooperation and the Energy Research Institute. After completing his master's in life science from Bose Institute, he was awarded with PhD degree from the University of Calcutta in 2019. Dr. Roy has worked as a senior scientific officer in Southern Asian Forum for Environment. He has also done a lot in research and planning, community intervention, beneficiary selection through algorithm, to name a few. He has worked as a principal investigator of 2 projects and co-leader of 7 projects under the aegis of international partnership, including GIZ, UNDP, UNEP, IUCN, American Consulate India, Pricewaterhouse Coopers, etc. He has great skills in languages, instrumentation, computation, mentoring, and sustainable development. Dr. Roy has expertise in research, designing, developing action plan, implementation program, and the list is going on. Dr. Roy has published a good number of papers in journal of national and international repute with very high impact factors. With these few words, I would like to request Dr. Roy to deliver his lecture.
Let me share my screen. Okay, just give me a 1 second here. Okay. Uh, yeah. Is my screen visible to everybody?
Yes,
Yes,
visible,
yes.
Orindam. Visible.
Yes, sir.
Can you see the changing of slides?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yes, sir. It is all right, sir.
Great. Okay. So I will be talking about conservation challenges in changing climate. See, the climate change is something that I have been trained on during my PhD, and during after PhD, I have been working with a civil society organization for like 2 years. And I will be discussing some case studies that I have come across during that time, and of course, even now, uh, which has a serious implication in conservation sciences. And I would like to start with a case study that we conducted in, and this is actually my experience that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about a very general scenario which is hard to relate this time, and I'm of course not going to talk about someplace else like Amazon or Madagascar, what is happening on there. I would prefer to talk about the country, the city, the state we are living on, and we actually has a chance to make impact. So this is the first study that we did. It's sort of an implementation project. Now, there are two type of conservation project usually that can happen. In first way, you can just select a species or select a ecoregion and assess the vulnerability, what are the type of danger to the wildlife and the flora and the fauna. So this is all very academic project. But when you want to try to save some animals or maybe some plants or a entire ecosystem, then you had to had some sort of implementation. You need to assess the risk and then implement your thoughts or your policy to save that particular species. So I am going to talk about two villages in Arunachal where I have extensively worked on, and it's a typical Himalayan agroecological landscape. So it's basically a river bed, and then there is a floodplains, and there are ample of forest. It's basically a cloud forest, as you can see. Most of the time the forests are covered with clouds, and it's in the district of West Khemang, and the nearest town from these villages are 14 kilometers away. So it took almost 1.5 hours, which includes almost a 30 minutes of trekking to the village at the last point. So this village is famous for this particular animal. It's called black neck crane, and they call it tung tung karmu, and it's a near threatened animal. Although IUCN, we read about these things that near threatened or vulnerable or least concern and stuff like that. But we need to remember that people actually go and visit their habitat, try to count the number of the species before deciding whether its conservation status. Now, most of the animals, you know, uh, or maybe amphibians, some of them amphibians or the fish, I mean, they are so rare, or these things requires money, of course. I mean, it's not that you can actually deploy one person to follow a entire some number of animals, that okay, see the population dynamics. It's practically impossible. So actually people have to revisit their study area to see what is the current status. Most of the cases, what happens in the developing countries, that animals and the plants, their conservation status are were outdated. For example, as a student of zoology, I think you must know something called Himalayan salamander, or Himalayan newt. Himalayan newt is a very famous, I would say, famous example, and it's found in Darjeeling and some region of Nepal, and it's sort of an endemic there population. I guess other than that, there are some sporadic population in some other parts of the world. in South Asia too, but mostly concentrated on that particular region. IUCN has reported that that particular that particular animals is least concern, or even there are a significant population out there. But they did the study in 2004, and now as I did my PhD in Darjeeling and mostly in the eastern part of Himalaya, so I know that it's very rare to find these animals, the Himalayan newts these days. I mean, it's highly possible that if somebody from the IUCN go there and check the conservation present status of the animal, they will find that there are not very individual alive. So it's also depends on a lot of things, as you know, but this is near threatened, although we believe that very few individuals of these birds are actually there. So don't believe something, this conservation status, very blindly. We need to think about that. Okay, when the last time was this sort of expedition was conducted to have a count on these birds or these animals, and then we need to see the how big was that, because it might be a very small expedition for 2-3 days, and it might get messed up. So anyway, these individual, according to IUCN, there are at least 6,000 mature individual, but we believe the number is very low. And it's a migratory bird from Tibet. So it's comes when there is a winter settling in the Tibet, it come from Tibet, and this is the Arunachal is their winter habitat. It's not the breeding habitat, but it's the winter habitat. And they spend quite a few months in Arunachal and then went back again. And this bird is basically the symbol of prosperity. So we often call it like Lokhi Pacha in Bengali. So this is sort of a Lokhi Pacha to them. And of course, this number of, so the Monpa tribe, the villages I'm talking about, they do not hunt this bird. These birds are sacred to them. And it's very interesting that how tribal community had thumb rule to conserve animals, which is very convenient, and which is very so-called ultra modern, I would say. So the population of these birds are declining. And when we went there, there is two villages that we have been talking about. One is Sangti and another is Chuk. And as you can see from the right side, it's a river villages, it's a river bed, and there is jungle and forest, and then there are very sporadic some settlements over there. And both the villages have less than 700 and distance from towns is quite a high. And it's a habitat of black-neck crane, and they are Monpa Buddhist agrarian community living in these villages. So they are basically Buddhist and they are agrarian. So basically the agriculture is their profession mostly. And you can see in this particular small two colorful images, these are the land use cover of this entire region. So the red are the settlements, the house and stuff, and yellow is this is basically the agricultural land, and the green are the forest, and the blue is the river. So this is the two villages, quite similar sort of villages, but we find a very difference in this particular two villages. So Chug actually and Sangti, the two villages. So Chug are basically poor people, and Sangti people are basically rich people. So Chug, they relies on traditional red rice they have, and Sangti is they're pushing for high yielding crops. They have started kiwi cultivation. They have also homestay and sort of tourism thing, and for that their construction activities some sort of going on. So they are very dynamic, and they divided their earning from different sources, and they're more of a very I would say rich compared to monetarily rich compared to Chuk people. On the other hand, like the Chuk people, they only use cultivate red rice, and they have some vegetables, homegrown vegetables garden, and then again they have some cattle and farming and stuff like that. So they kind of relies on those. And if we do a vulnerability indexing for those days, it's nothing important in that. You just need to know that we ask some questions is about how much money they usually earn, how much agricultural practice is good over there, how much amount of crops they raise, what are their profession and stuff like that. And then come up with a matrix which says that if the vulnerability indexing is high, which means the place is highly vulnerable towards climate change because of climate change. And as Shanti, they have higher livelihood options. So they're doing agriculture, they're doing kiwi farming, they're doing tourism and stuff like that. So they have better food security. They do not have to think about their food that much, and their health is quite better compared to the Chug people. Chug, on the other hand, they're more vulnerable to climate change and lower adaptive capacity. So it's important to understand that finally we come up with an matrix that says that for the climate change, the Chug people, the poor people, they are more vulnerable towards climate change than the Sangti people. And then we went there for the black neck crane and its conservation status, and it was a Satoyama initiative project from Japan. But we kind of discover something, and it's called Sunsun Bora. Sunsun Bora is the red rice over there. And when we went to Sangti, nobody was. They were farming the. They were cultivating the high yielding rice variety. But when we went to Chug, they are mostly cultivating this particular indigenous rice variety. It's a red rice, and it's a long time rice. So rice usually has different time for cultivation. Usually the monsoon rice, depending on the strains and stuff, so it will be maybe 150 day, 135 days. But this is a long rice, so they started somewhere around the May, and it's still it continue cultivation till December, when the harvest is towards second December. And it was a tremendous smelly rice. I haven't eat something that type of aroma, and you can actually eat the rice on its own. So it has a tremendous flavor. So the Sangti people, they cultivate only high yielding crops with chemical fertilizer and pesticide, and the Chug, they typically relies on red rice, and they have compost based fertilizer for from cows and the leaves, homegrown vegetables and home fed animals and parts. So Chug are more vulnerable to climate change and any sort of change, and Sangti are way more better according to the matrix. Okay. And so to have a sum up, what we find over there, Sangti are very prosperous and Chug are very poor. They're highly climate vulnerable. Sangti need a lot of input for their livelihood. They require seed, fertilizer, pesticide, and fuel for the machine. But the Chug doesn't need any input. And as usual, uh, you know it's an interesting case study that theoretically the Sangti are more stable population, they're more prosperous, they have more money, they have more livelihood option. But when COVID came, after the COVID, the first wave, we went there for after having a lot of permission and stuff like that. We went there, and we see that the Sangti people, because they need a lot of input from outside, they need seed every time, they need fertilizer from outside, so they cannot do farming for that year. And this is a problem, this is a really problem. And the black neck crane, because this is a problem, because the black neck crane, that particular bird, they actually, their habitat is those rice field. Okay. And although their number is very much declining, even now, but we want to see that, okay, but after corona, I mean, Sangti, the rich village, they do not even have the cultivation thing, so they stop cultivating for that year, because there is nothing that coming from outside to have them made them the cultivation. But for the Chuk people, it's business as usual. I mean, they do not have any impact and some stuff like that. So we started an implementation program, because on and our focus is to rejuvenate the black neck crane population. So we understand the risk first. The risk was, the black neck crane, they eat the insect from the rice field, and they come somewhere around December and stay till February. So the point is they usually eat insect from the rice field. And now the Sangti people and most of the villages there, they use so much pesticide these days, and the insect and the other pest, they die. And on the top of that, the Sangti people, the rich people, and the most of the other villages, they used uh, they use high yielding rice, which is a short rice. So usually the rice harvested in December, the red rice. So when the black neck crane came just after harvesting, they will find the small insect, and which is their food. But now the harvesting ends at around October. So in 2 months, all the insect and all the stuff, they had already died because of the fertilizer, and now it's just a blank field. So their habitat, their typical habitat of having a agro landscape or rice field, that went off because of the short length rice. So we started doing that okay, we need, if we have to rejuvenate the black neck crane population over there, we need to sort of make everything like it was before. So, and that starts with the red rice. Now the problem here of the implementation is to make people understand that uh, this is beneficial for you, and people will not understand if that is monetary beneficial. I mean, I'm so the Sangti people are having good amount of money from the high yielding rice. Why should they go back to the red rice until and unless, I mean, it's the yield of the red rice is half as high yielding rice, and they are also doing high yielding vegetables and stuff like that. So they were happy with that before COVID. So the thing is, what we did was we started with the village Chug, which is a comparatively poor village, but who still relies on red rice. And red rice, so we started to write about this red rice. We write an article about it, and we try to publish, and we publish it in a local newspaper, Times of India. And then once we published about the red rice, we got some calls, and from the markets, from the rice exporter, that they are interested to buy those rice even from that village directly, but they want us to assure a certain quantity. We talked to the Chuk people, and the Chuk people were happy because before that they usually have the red rice by their own, and the amount is so they usually have it. I mean, nobody was interested to buy that particular rice because the market was not created. Now the Chuk people, they started producing red rice as usual, and the person who were buying rice, they came to the village and they started buying the rice 3 times of an high yielding rice. So the point is, even though you are having as twice as low production of compared to high yielding rice, but you are getting 3 times of that rice. So the Chug. So now the project status is after the COVID, the Sangti people were also realized that living in a Himalayan villages, uh, even a landslide, even with the advent of landslide, increasing landslide and flash flood. I mean, it's any time they could get strangled. So the communication could be lost anytime. So this time it was for COVID, but it could be for flash flood or landslide. And so they need to produce something which is indigenous. They need to focus on something which they do not export. So like Chug, who do not export fertilizer or pesticide, they simply use the cow dung for the fertilization. So they need to shift their livelihood regime. They need to make their livelihood more self-resilient. So that or self-sustainable, so that they could produce their food by their own. And now we are working with almost 150 household and who are producing this red rice even in the Sangti, so at the at the rich villages, and which are being we are trying to make the market linkage so that it could get export and the farmers get higher price. And after some time we are expecting that the rice field will remain, because it's the red rice was a long rice, I mean long time rice, longer month rice. So it will remain till the black neck came, and their habitat will be restored. So this is one of the I would say one of the implementation project that I have been working with, and I have very high hope for that. So one of the major takeaway from the particular project is definitely self-sufficiency is important, and Himalayan villages often get isolated in the landslide or flash flood. But the idea of entire thing, that you cannot conserve animal in this particular time, in particular this particular era, without without the people around it. So you need to consider the population, the human population, while conserving an animals, because now we are living very very closely. As our habitat is being, their habitat is being destroyed by our agricultural or industrial or others need. So the conflict is increasing, the man and animal conflict. So whenever we are trying to conserve an animal practically, we need to think about the human population that live in and around of it. So let's say, I mean, the practical problem, if you consider, like, let's say Sundarban, you know, the if you consider it's a biosphere reserve, it's a tiger habitat, all is fine, but there are 50 lakhs people living, both side of the over India and Bangladesh, in this particular region. So you cannot simply take them and shift them to other places. This is their home too. So you need to come up with an idea, you need to come up with a solution. The solution should consider the human population and of course the landscape or the animals or the plants that we are trying to save. But this is important, that we cannot do conservation without human population these days, at least. I mean, we cannot simply say it that the Vitorkonica in Vitorkonica people. Okay, I will come for Vitokonica once again. But so East Kolkata wetland could be a nice example. I mean, it's a Ramsar site, it's a excellent wetlands, it's renew all the Calcutta sways. But the thing is, there are t- possibly 10 lakhs of people living there, 1 million people living in that area. So it's very difficult to shift them to someplace else for saving the entire ecosystem. So we need to work with the people who living there, and that's important to understand for you, because this thing you will not find in any book. I have been reading Odom and Miller for a very long time, but the communication now the conservation paradigm is such that we need to incorporate human factors for the conservation of the entire thing. Okay, so I'm talking about Vitor Konica. So this has come the second case study. The Vitor Konica is it's a national forest, it's a crocodile habitat, and of course it's a nice mangrove forest over there. The Vitor Konica has a typical problem. It's an invasive species, which is called Venami shrimp. And it's basically cultivated in just beside the mangrove area, which is again a habitat for crocodile and all. So what they do is they inundated the rice field by the salt water, and Venami is a salt water stream. So it's a very interesting that where they were cultivating in previously, they had inundated that land with salt water so that they can cultivate shrimp. So instead of rice, they are shifting towards shrimp cultivation. The problem is one first, this is an exotic species. The species is not local, so there is a high chance of getting this species into the ecosystem, and which could easily damage the Vidorponica ecosphere. The second problem is, even though this is a shrimp, or like a it's a shrimp, but it's very difficult for the farmers to get benefited by the culture, because run by multiple companies. It's sort of like corporates, who will provide everything, the vitamins, the minerals, the medicine for the shrimp and the small shrimp. And the farmers role of the farmers is to raise them. The problem is, when, let's say, 100 farmers or 1000 or 10,000 farmers, shrimp farmers over there, if everybody had a good production, then the rate of the shrimp will be low. So it's a simple market economics, that if the supply is huge, the price will be low. So you will find sometimes, the especially during winter, in my college days, I used to have the cauliflower for 1 rupees, maybe 50. So if the 10,000 farmers, they all of them have better, production of this particular shrimp, they try. So what will happen, that they all of them produce better shrimp, so the market price will be lower. Only they will get benefited if some of them are having better shrimp production and other loss. So it's a perpetual cycle of loss, and nobody, the farmers will never become benefited. The problem is, for the hope that, okay, we will make some money one day, the farmers are deliberately inundated their land and desperately trying to get an alternative livelihood from the forest. As their present livelihood is not secure, they are more tending to go to the forest and collect woods and collect honey and stuff like that. So their dependency on the forest is have increased, and every time they will went to their forest, it's a risk for their life, as well as it's a risk for the ecosystem, because it's going to vandalize more and more. So the idea was to give them a very stable livelihood. And we have like 5 villages over there. We sort of work with the 5 villages just at the fringe of Vitorkonika Wildlife Sanctuary, where they usually go to the sanctuary to collect woods and stuff like that. We see this problem at a different view, that the first problem statement was the exotic species. The second problem statement was, we need to give them a stable livelihood, so that their dependency on the forest may get reduced. So we started this thing called sustainable intensification of local natural resources. What we started with a training center, for a village, with and center for mud crab aquaculture. So mud crab is a local species, and we hire an aquaculture expert over there, and he conducted several training program, and we started to make them understand that, okay, this could be a better, livelihood option for your you could use mud crab, you could, because it's a less investment. We wouldn't say more return, but you will find it and another problem with the Vietnamese shrimp, it's a disease. As it is an exotic species, there are a lot of tropical diseases of that shrimp, which leads to a very lower production sometime. But for mud crabs, it's a species of that particular area, so it's fine. Villages need to be self-resilient in some, so that their dependency for production to other places must be reduced. use another we use another sort of training program to make another villagers on cultivating fish. And then the third way, we started making the fish sheet over there. So we built some hacha and hatchery over there for hapa. And then comes the fish feed. So there are four villages, they are very much depending on each other. So somebody is making crab, somebody is making fish, which is a feed for the crab, and then somebody is making fish seeds, and somebody is making the feed for the fish. And they're very much interdependent on each other. And the idea is that they do not need any output or input from the outside. And what happened by the end of 1 year, we reached like 230 families for over those four villages. And they sell the crab at almost 750 rupees per kilo from the villages. And they started adopted that. The next year, more and more people approaches us that you should conduct training again and again, I mean, till everybody is converted. And this is a win-win situation. I mean, the villagers get a stable livelihood, so they will not go for the forest to collect natural resources. That's one thing. The second thing is, the risk of invasive species is being reduced because mud crab is a local thing. And the thirdly, it's even sometime selection of a particular local species could be very harmful for the environment, but this is so much economically practical, or economically high rate they're getting for mud crab. So they of course sell it to the outer places. I mean, that's go to our plates. So this is one of the way of looking at conservation. It is important, as I said, like when we are conserving, we are conserving. So the approach of forest people in Vitorkonika was to shut down every activity near the forest area. Now the problem is, in over India, the number of forest cars is very low, and you cannot actually, it's not possible to guard the every part of the forest. The villagers will go. Now, without without making them pay for when they're going, if we go into the root cause of why they're going, and if we try to address that particular issue, they are going to forest because they do not have secure livelihood over here. If you can provide them secure livelihood of something, they will not go to the forest. And this is a beneficially, I mean, win-win situation for both the villagers and the forest people. So this is one model I have worked on. The third conservation part, this is a nice example. It's called eastern hula gibbon. So this is possibly the only hula gibbon in India, a gibbon species in India. And this is again, it's in Arunachal, it's in the lower Divang Valley. And when we went there, we saw that it's a tremendous animal. I mean, their call is very loud, and they have a higher, their arm length is higher than the feet length. So they cannot usually walk because they're very unstable when they're walking. They are actually canopy dwellers, so they actually it's similar to the Tarzan and stuff like that, and possibly Spider-Man. So they usually go roam around with the canopy. So the community-based conservation model we started. Okay, let me tell you the problem. So this the green part you were seeing just over the blue box. This was the original. This was the the sanctuary, the actually wildlife sanctuary, Mihao Wildlife Sanctuary. Now this entire part was the part of the sanctuary, but before human intervention came, and before government are making their road, so a lot of people come there for construction related work, and who got settled in there, and they cut the forest and make the land for agriculture. So this entire region was a part of the forest, and now it's only there. So the problem is, when the people started cutting the forests, there are small forest patch that remains. It's a very small forest patch. I would say maybe 10 trees and those became the habitat of these particular hulok gibbon. So hulok gibbon has the entire area has a population of hulok gibbon, but eastern hulok gibbon. But when they started cutting trees here, some population, they got stuck and they will cannot go back into the main population to them. And we kind of work with this stuck hulok gibbon there, and there is a problem. I mean, they're terribly delicate animals. If you handle them wrongly, they will never uh, mate, or their community will never accept them. So we need to work very delicately. We can simply catch them and throw them into the mainland, and that's practically impossible because of the finance. I mean, it's a lot of money that requires for conducting that sort of experiment. So yeah, I mean, it's so there we meet the tribal people who lives in that particular area. So other than the construction worker from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, there has been the local tribes that call Idu, Mishmi, and Adi, and they are responsible hunter. And this is very interesting that if you went to the northeast, mostly the Arunachal, some part of Assam, Manipur and Mizoram, you will find the community forest has higher biodiversity than the national forest. So it's very interesting that how they manage the dynamics of the forest. And like the northern Indian population migrate to that place, and before coming to that, these population come to Arunachal. I mean, the northern Indian population. So the Idu, Mishmi, and Adi, they actually do this hunting thing, and they have a tremendous rules for their hunting. I remember some of them, like if they hunt, they first of all they could only hunt in some days of the year, and if they hunt, they have to sleep outside of their house for 7 days, and they cannot sleep with their partners, and they cannot take bath. So this is something that made them that unless it's extremely important, they do not hunt. So this is how the rules how the rules made the conservation of the animals properly. They only hunt when there is a necessity. So this is very interesting that in West Bengal also sometime we will see that conservation organization, they will uh, talk a lot about how the hunting, Adivashi hunting, is causing um, the animal the death of or death of the animals. But it's interesting that they remain shut. Those organizations remain shut when there is a hydro power project in Purulia going on, or there is a other mining activity in the Purulia going on. I mean, this is a very contrast. I mean, it's very easy to blame on somebody without knowing, without staying there. It's not this. So this is one part that you need to understand, that it's the conservation is not very white or black thing. It's a very gray region, and every region has its thumb rule. So this is very important to understand. The thumb rule is better understand by the population, by the tribal population, by the indigenous population. They understand the thumb rule of nature better than us, and we need to accept that, and we need to work with them. And we did it with them. What we try to do, that that we find out almost 40 eastern hulok gibbon, they stuck outside the patch, outside the Mehaw Wildlife Sanctuary, where they coexist with human. So practically 13 group in 13 patches. And you can understand that whenever they goes down through the agricultural field, the dogs usually attack. And as I say, like, they are not very good runner. So they cannot walk properly, so they are basically canopy dweller, and you are taking away their canopy. So they will not come down and try to go to another forest patch. They will simply mate with each other, and that will create a very good we got there, and there is a behavioral modification that that has already started happening. First of all, they are extremely canopy dweller, but now there are examples where they are coming at the ground for food, having food, and they were actually primarily fruitivorous, so they eat fruit for their diet, and now they are became leaf, so they are depending on the leaf more than the fruit. And of course, when they're starting this crop rate, they have sometime they had started, this will increase the conflict between the tribal population or the North Indian population over there, and with them, the these particular animals. So what we are doing is we are trying to have a sort of conservation friendly tourism, so that these people understand, the North Indian people who came there for who settled there, and to make them understand, okay, this thing, these animals could give you some sort of revenue, because if the tourist came, they will of course be the benefited to those community. So first we are trying to keep these individual alive. The next step, what we are doing, as you can see in the previous image, that uh, so we are sort of trying to build a canopy bridge over there. And but that's a part of a very that solution is a very stopgap solution. So for that we need to the ideal solution is that we have like 13 14 patches where the bull given leaves. We need to connect these patches first, so that the reproductive isolation, I mean reproductive bottleneck, that do not occur. So we are trying that. We are trying to place some fruits and bamboo trees among these patches, but these patches are located sometime 1 kilometer to each other. So we need to do that. We need to make fruit and bamboo tree through the 1 kilometer, even though it's a single or double row of trees. But we need to do that. We need to provide them the canopy. And so this is what we are working in that particular region. The last example I would say for Sundarban, I mean, again, it's the livelihood. As I mentioned, that it's a tiger reserve, so the livelihood is very very crucial over there. I mean, the live in the point of view of livelihood. I mean, climate change and other stuff, the livelihood is destroying, and as the livelihood destroying, people tend to go to the forest for because they have nothing else to do. So this is one of the very first time we walked in that particular area. We try to provide the people alternative livelihood, so their dependence on the forest reduce and the human and animal conflict get reduced. So this is one example that we are trying to sort of build this the floating floating trays, or where they can cultivate stuff, cultivate vegetables, and have some revenue even during the flooded time. So this is basically reusable plastic jugs and stuff. And we made this 20 liters and sometimes 50 liters jar we have used here. And this is what we made over there, so that their dependency on forest, it's get reduced. Okay, the last and final thing is, um, other than working on climate change, I'm also a climate communicator. So what does that mean is, you know I try to communicate climate change in Bengali. And this is my website. We have volunteer option. We usually take interns for 3 months to 4 months. And we have also volunteering option, and we started a campaign called Bengal Need Climate Education, because West Bengal and Bangladesh is one of the most climate vulnerable region. West Bengal is the most climate vulnerable region in the entire country, and Bangladesh is a very climate vulnerable region. Now, when we communicate about climate change, you often heard this thing that 2-degree increment in temperature, or maybe 3 feet increment of sea level rise. Now, the problem is we are tropical people, right? We live in an environment, or we are very suitable. I mean, we often see 40-45 degree temperature in summer. What could that additional 2 degree made difference. So this is how that conventional approach of climate change communication is misleading people, I would say, because we do not strategize to make the right thing, saying the right thing at the right time. Over Bengal, over both the Bengal, there are several impacts of climate change that is visible, which is better communicable than this 2 degree or 3 feet of sea level rising. When we heard about something is rising like 3 feet, we would think a simple barrier or a simple brick wall could stop that, but it's not like that. It's so the first thing is the extreme events are increasing, even though in the form of heat waves. The cyclones are becoming very violent this day. I mean, the type 4 cyclones are very common these days, and it's often like, usually previously the cyclones were like category 2 cyclones, which is maybe 70 kilometers per hour wind speed and so. But now type 4, type 5 cyclones are, it's so phony, Amphan, and there are multiple cyclones in last 2-3 years. So and this will happen again and again. So the people living in the region nearby the sea, they have a unique problem that the salt water of the sea, they inundated their land and their freshwater pond. And once the salt water inundated your land, come to your land, you cannot cultivate for 2 or 3 years almost. So it's very difficult for them. And if you consider the infrastructure over sea, near sea region, I mean, it's devastating. The Amphan actually had effect on Calcutta as well, which is almost 100 kilometers away from the sea. So the extreme events are very much increasing. The heat waves, in uh, in this particular month of April and May, March and April, there were 8 heat waves uh, in the north, in the southern part of Bengal. So it's huge, and we need to understand that this is going to happen again and again. So the option is to get adopted, and option is to know that what is going to happen over there. The climate change is making the conservation paradigm more difficult, because as I say that for conservation now you need to consider the human factor, and if their livelihood is get affected, the conservation program will also get affected. So in a way, I would say that I will share the link, the Facebook page and stuff like that. I would I mean I would sincerely want that you go through the material, go through the website, interact with our peers and stuff, and apply for the micro grant. We had a micro grant program, so we usually release one grant of 5,000 rupees each month, and anybody, and absolutely anybody, can apply. I mean, it's class 2, from class 4, maybe class 4 5 students, to any employee. I mean, anybody can apply in this particular micro grant program. So with that, I would like to say thank you, and I'm available for question. If you had any, I would love to answer your question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roy, for your such a valuable, interesting, and very significant talk. And I'm sure that it will have an immense impact on our students, and they will definitely have some take home message. At least I have one. So, thank you once again. And now this session is open for question and answers. And for this, I'm handing over the charge to my departmental colleagues, Professor Chandan Sharkar and Dr. Shomana Tarakar Mukherjee.
Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you so much, Imani. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Imani.
Okay.
Now, before moving into the question answer session, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to you, our eminent speaker, Dr. Orindam Roy. Your talk has enriched us a lot. It was very interesting. Actually, the case studies that you framed for today's talk, I was really carried away. how this in a descriptive way. Actually, it was so very nice to hear. Now, sorry, we had very few questions. I think all were engrossed in your description of the case studies that you gave. I think 4 case studies you gave. The first one was from the Himalayan region, the Tungtung Karmyu, as I've heard, and
Right.
the two tribal people, the Sangti and the Chug. Now, with respect to that, actually, your first case study, there is a question by Jewel Rana Masood. He has asked if the people want to produce more red rice. I think with the present scenario, when they are able to sell it in the market, which they were not having the earlier time, okay, so
Right.
they will be using the fertilizers and the insecticides, which may be harmful to the animals and the birds of that region. Now,
Right.
if they can buy the chemical fertilizers now, I think he's talking with respect to
Yeah,
the current scenario. So,
I understand.
they will, yeah.
I
So they
understand.
will be earning more from the red rice. If they do
Right.
so, his question is, what will be the impact and fate of the regional animals and the
Right.
plants?
So I understand. This is a very nice question, but the thing with chemical fertilizer and pesticide is, if you have a farming experience or any sort of experience in farming, you would understand this. The thumb rule is the indigenous rice varieties, which is, I'm talking about conservation. I of course definitely want to talk about indigenous rice varieties. There are almost 2 lakhs varieties which is reported, which were before independence and before green revolution. Now possibly, 500 to 2000 varieties are there. So the thing is, these varieties, they're indigenous, if you put chemical fertilizer and pesticide on that particular varieties, it will grow such a fast way, and their metabolism will be destroyed, will be completely changed such a way that even before producing fruit and producing crop, it will grow big, and it's a very standard practice. I mean, for any indigenous variety, you cannot use chemical fertilizer. It will not improve the production of that particular thing. The chemical fertilizer are typically used in these japonica rice varieties, which are, or rather I would say, Japanese rice varieties. So basically they're short and stubble, and they have certain characteristic which responds for this particular production. But again, I mean, so the red rice, it's valuable for the smell, and of course it's valuable because it's organic. There are two interesting things together. So possibly couldn't happen. I mean, if somebody could try producing any indigenous rice with chemical fertilizer and thing, it will be a bad trying, I would say.
Okay, I would request Chandan, if he's having any question at his end. Chandan, are you having any question at your end?
No, there are no such questions. No, there are no more questions.
Okay.
Uh,
So,
okay, excuse me. Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Okay. So I actually wanted to know that how much difficult it was, or it is actually, to convince these tribal peoples, who are living adjacent to these vulnerable areas, to shift or to get any kind of training. Shift the way they used to practice some kind of things. And then if you are proposing any new idea to them, how much they are capable of getting that. I mean, I have heard that they are very strict to what they feel, what they do. It is hard to convince them. That This is only for my information. I'm curious.
Yeah. So basically, the Arunachal, in Arunachal, I have worked with two class of people. One is the red rice thing that I work with the Monpa people. Monpa people, they are Buddhist, but they are not tribal. I mean, tribal in the sense of indigenous. They are not indigenous, but the Adi and the Mishmi tribes that I worked in so during the Hulok Gibbon study, they were actually not part of the problem. I mean, they were very much happy over there till the population from North India that come and settle there. So the part of the problem was to convince those construction worker who came there for construction and then settled there in last 10 years to not to kill those animals. So I mean, I have worked with almost 14 indigenous community in the northeastern region, and in Purulia and in Jharkhand and in Bihar. And I mean, talking to them is always a pleasure, and you always learned a lot from those people. I mean, you learned a lot of thing about nature and conservation, and so I would say, like, communicating with them is one of the most precious experience I ever had during my field days. I mean, they're very very wise, and if they started talking, if they started trusting you, they will actually share their knowledge, and that's actually 1,000 of years of knowledge, the indigenous knowledge they hold, and which is again, it's much better than any conservation book or any livelihood book that we get. But so it's the human animal conflict is the present term, and it's very I would say very poorly written in Odom or in Miller. I mean, because when they started, this conflict wasn't when they started writing these book maybe 30-40 years ago. I mean, these things were not very prominent back that time. But this is like, the tribals on the other hand, their thumb rules and their techniques, I would say, like, we need to take those knowledges before they move out, and before that get lost, the knowledges got lost. We need to seriously take that and take into the consideration that in our conservation program, or nature based program. So I had a very pleasant experience with working with I have worked with almost 14 tribal community, and I have tremendous experience working with them.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I was quite curious to know that, but yes, what you said, that they were very interested and they have immense knowledge, and if they trust you, this is the thing that I wanted to hear, that you said that if they trust you, they can share whatever information they have. They are glad to do that. Yeah, and the thing, I also teach some of the things related to environmental issues and all these things. But what I really liked, one thing about your talk, that you framed everything surrounding the problems persisting in India, you know, because whenever we talk about these issues, we address generally examples related to something happened in America or some other areas. But it is really important to address the issues which are there in our country. So this is really important thing which I found. So well, thank you very much, Dr. Roy. Okay, so we have successfully reached to the end of our.
Mani,
Okay. Yes.
Mani, I just have a last question. I think a
Okay.
very
Okay.
fundamental
Sure.
one
Okay.
that I want to ask Dr. Roy. Dr. Roy, you have said one line: "We cannot conserve animals without the human population."
Yeah.
Okay, but you have actually hit a very sort of fundamental and something very crucial part of the ecosystem, which is the human population nowadays. Now, what sort of human population are you talking about? What I know is that uh,
Okay.
uh, I will
I'm
also
talking
be
about the population living in that area, the indigenous population
population
who have
living
this.
in that area. That means if we are to make them knowledgeable in some sense with respect to the habitat that is being exploited or being threatened, so that can again uh, take back the things to their original form, or at least leave the part that is being exploited. Am
See,
I right?
being exploited is it's a two-way thing, and what I understand that there is no very general solution to this entire problem. I mean, what happening in Sundarban and what happening in Duars is completely different, two different thing. But I would say, when I say that we need to consider the population while conserving a place, what I meant, try to meant is, nowadays human population and human, let's say, human abundance are so huge. And let's say, if we consider the Shobor, or maybe the Lodhas, or rather Birhor, rather even Birhor is a great example in Purulia. And these tribes, they have been living in the forest for maybe thousands of the years, and now suddenly ranger who read 2 pages and then have a training of 3 months, and they decided to move them away because they want to protect the forest. I mean, this is something very ridiculous, and this is something, that's what I mean to say, that if you really want to conserve a particular region, you need to talk to those people, because those people have the knowledge, and their practices are very much related to the conservation practices. Whatever we read, the way they control the population dynamics over those regions. See, I can give you an example. In the place I born and brought up in Medinipur, Jongol Mohol, so called. So the the Adivashis used to hunt for a day, and which is becoming a festival sort of thing. Now the situation is very difficult to explain, but it's very difficult to take side. But back then, what happened? I mean, they used to go for a hunting for a day or two in a particular year, and they used to hunt these big boars, and so wild boars. And now, with stopping of that hunting and any sort of activities, what happened, these boars, as there are no apex predator in the northern, in those Midnapur and Jhargram and Purulia, Bankura, these part of the forest, as there is no apex predators, this boar, the number, they increase exponentially, and now they have started raiding the cropland nearby to the forest. So the point is, it's not always the idea of conservation is to close everything. It's the we call it forest management, right? And sometimes you need to cut the trees to managing a forest. You need to burn some, you need to create a forest fire even sometime to make the forest clear and it's habitable for the animals. So it's the practice, and it's very difficult to explain, but this is a practice. What I mean to say, that we need to consider the human factor. It's basically the human living there, human living in that forest for so many years. I mean, we cannot simply take them out and give them a place uh, in the city as cheap labor or something. I mean, that way it wouldn't work. It shouldn't work, at least now.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was really looking forward for those explanations. Actually, the tribals or the related people over there, who are responsible for actually looking after that ecosystem, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So now, if we have no more questions, then I would like to finally move into our last part of the session, that is the vote of thanks.
Okay.
And for
Before that, just I would like to say, I have just sharing the link of of my website and stuff. So I would really like if somebody joined and if somebody want to have a discuss, and that's all. Okay, please continue.
okay, so for giving the vote of thanks, I would like to request Dr. Shutupa Shannel Assistant Professor, Department of Zoology, Krishnagar Government College, to kindly do the honors, please.
Thank you, Himani.
Okay.
A very good afternoon to all present here. I would like to express my gratitude to our today's honorable speaker, Dr. Orindam Roy, not only to take his time to grace today's event, but also for sharing his thoughts and knowledge with our students and definitely with us. I express my humble thanks to Dr. Roy for enlightening us with this commendable talk on this emerging problem. Special thanks to our YC sir, to our IQAC coordinator, and to our TCS sir, who always encouraging us to organize this type of webinar. I extend my gratitude on behalf of Zoology Department to our HOD, Dr. Sumana Das, Associate Professor, and Dr. Tanmoy Sannal, Assistant Professor Zoology, to organize a webinar even amidst pandemic. I must thank the organizing team and the technical committee team to work hard for the last few days to make the webinar successful. Thanks are also to our students who actively participate in today's webinar. Thank you everyone once again for making this event great successful. Thank you.